from Vassar College, this is Conversations at the Salt Line with Wesley Dixon.
On this episode, a conversation with Jonathan Littman.
Hi everyone, it's me, Wes, and welcome to another episode of Conversations at the Salt Line. Today, I am happy to welcome Vassar alum, class of 1985, independent producer, Jonathan Littman. Thank you for being here.
It's great to be here.
You told me outside this is your first time doing a podcast.
It is.
I find that very hard to believe, Jonathan. Jonathan, as you will hear, as you may already know, has an incredibly expansive media career. And so I just can't believe that you haven't sort of dipped your toe in this pond yet.
I'm so used to doing electronic press kits. But the podcasting thing was more COVID.
Okay.
And so I don't know. I listen to them all the time. I just sort of missed on being on one.
And the other thing is we have another cool connection and crossover with the podcast. So you're not classmate, but former Vassar, or fellow Vassar alum rather, and Hollywood person, Allison Abner, was on this podcast just a few months ago. And you told me downstairs that you and Allison worked together on what show?
Without a Trace.
That's incredible. My mom loved Without a Trace. She loved it. And so, of course, when I found this, I had to text Allison and say, tell me all the dirty secrets about Jonathan.
Great.
So I'm going to read you what Allison wrote to me in response to my attempt to get sordid details about your working relationship together. Allison said to me, the text said, verbatim, any funny stories about you all that I should say on the air? She says to me, actually, the show we worked on, Without a Trace, was one of the best experiences I've had. And almost everyone on the show remained friends to this day. It was such a well-run show, and the production company was amazingly supportive of everything we wanted to do. So there's no tea.
Wow.
That's what she said.
That's nice.
It's high praise.
Thank God.
And I'm sure she's telling the truth.
Yeah. I mean, that show especially was very close to me.
Oh, wonderful. We're going to get into some of the shows that you worked on in a little bit. But I wanted to just sort of ask, you've worked in media for a long time, obviously. And so it's sort of an odd question, but what do you watch? What have you watched most recently in your free time that was not work related? No screenings, none of that, but just like for fun. What has Jonathan watched on TV?
So I watch a lot.
Okay.
I love and have through COVID really discovered a lot of the British shows.
Okay.
Which are pretty astoundingly good, especially in the area I love, which is police procedurals. But right now, I'm watching The English Teacher.
I've heard of that show.
It's on FX.
Okay.
And it's really funny. It's one of the best new comedies.
Okay.
That's great. I'm a big fan of The Old Man, which is in its second season.
Okay.
And I just devoured, and I really mean the word devour. My wife and I devoured Slow Horses. We're right at season 6.
I love
we're
that.
Waiting for it to finish.
So I hadn't heard, you of course know the lingo much better than I do, but you called those police procedurals, is that what you called them?
The British shows. Yeah.
Okay. So I watched some of them growing up, but I was kind of too young to really appreciate them when that was really, really like dominating the TV market. But my mom, I don't know if this fits in the right category, she used to love JAG, is that the name of the show? And that's like a Navy.
It's the Navy Judicial Corps. Yeah,
she loved it.
Yeah.
And I never quite understood why, but I just think I don't know, something about it was very enticing.
You know what? You get a nice closed-ended story.
Yes, exactly.
Wraps up beautifully after 44 minutes.
I love it,
and it's a good mystery.
I love that. It's
Nobody
so
ever
cool.
turns away from a good mystery. That's
true. It's very, very true. I love Judy Blume as a child. So you have amassed this incredible body of work in media, which we're going to delve into, like I said, in a minute. But you had to start somewhere. And, of course, you really started here at Vassar, which we're happy to claim.
I really did.
So tell us, what about your Vassar experience sort of seeded in you for decades to come later on, sort of this bug and excitement for media, for production, for television? Tell us about your time here at Vassar.
So my time here at Vassar was completely spent in the drama department.
Wonderful.
I lived, breathed, just doing work in the drama department because my first career, as I like to put it, was going to be in the theater.
Okay.
And that's what I really thought I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so that was my focus when I was here. And I say this all the time, to this day, my drama lit classes I still use because great stories are great stories and great scripts are great scripts, and you can pull from them. And it was, and plus it was a community. It was just a great community. When I left Vassar and went into, well, I should back up to Vassar too, because Vassar, the other thing Vassar gave me was my psych classes were instrumental. I was too scared of the English department to really take English classes because the books are really long.
Yeah.
And I'm not a great reader, which I'll fully admit.
I find that hard to believe. You
Well, I
read
can read
all
I can read
day.
scripts quickly, but books a little less quickly. But having a liberal arts education is such great training to be a storyteller, because you pull on so many
Right.
different aspects, and that worked great for me.
Incredible.
But when I left, what I didn't know was the theater was in incredibly bad shape. And most people don't remember the mid 80s in New York, where just the Brits were just coming in, and Disney
Okay.
hadn't cleaned up 42nd Street yet.
Okay.
And half the theaters were closed. And at a dinner with another alum and best friend of mine, Mark Bennett, who was a roommate, he looked at me and said, "All you do at night is sit home and watch TV. Why are you in the theater?" And it was kind of this light bulb moment of, wow, that's really true. It is all I do. And the next day I called the career development office and said, "Can you send me a list of everyone who was working in TV in New York?" And when I got to the S's, Debbie Strickhardt, who's class of 74, who worked at ABC in children's programming, needed an assistant, or really a secretary, because that was, the assistant wasn't a word.
Right.
And that's where I started.
That's incredible.
And everything became a connect the dots from that point on.
There's so many cool nuggets in that story. The first is that someone saw something in you that you didn't quite recognize in yourself immediately, right? Your friends
Yeah.
sort of said, really, this is what you do, this is who you are, and let me shine this light or mirror to you to sort of make you recognize this is what you
Yeah.
enjoy doing, right? And it sounds simple, but of course, I think we often forget that where we probably should go in life is the place that we enjoy the most, doing the thing that we enjoy the most. That's an incredible insight from them and a gift from them, I imagine you see
It is, and that's happened a couple of other times. You know, if you told the 1985 version of me
Right.
that I would end up being a producer and working on TV shows, that was incomprehensible in my mind, because I really wanted to be Hal Prince,
Right.
and that's a very large, range
Yeah.
from getting from one place to the other.
Of course.
And so, and a lot of it was over the years, people saying,
You're quite good at this.
"You'd be good at this," or "Have you ever thought of that?"
Yeah.
And listening to it.
Yeah.
And it's really made me believe that most people know you better than you know yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The other funny part about this, not funny, but the other gem in that story is I think the humility, if you will, that you demonstrated in going back to your college career development office at the time after you graduated, right? Most people think that's not a resource you sort of avail yourself of after you've started a career and you've gone off the campus into the world. But you were like, no, I'm going to call them and I'm going to ask for help. And they gave you the help you asked for.
Absolutely. And I didn't even know even where else to look.
Yeah.
I was working for a casting office for a while, but they were mostly theatrical. But I knew there had to be Vassar grads,
Yeah.
in the business. So it was,
And there were.
and there were.
That's
And it's,
incredible.
I think it's still a great resource.
Absolutely. So that's how you started in TV, moving from casting in the theatrical department into TV. And then there was some time between when that happened and when you first sort of got your first sort of executive or leadership roles in TV production. So what was that interim time like? And what did you learn during those quote unquote interim years?
Well, it's interesting because it really was get your foot in the door anywhere you can.
Right.
And I got my foot in the door in children's programming. Did I want to be in children's programming? Was it a goal? No. But I worked for great executives, and that was my first insight to what being a network executive was, and I liked it. I happened to meet at ABC a woman who was in daytime. They were on our floor. And I kind of liked the idea that, this was another interesting pathway because it's dramatic storytelling. It's 250 episodes a year. And
Sorry, let me hold on. Daytime dramatic storytelling. Do you mean like soap operas.
Yeah, it is. I mean, soap operas are
I
dramatic
love
storytelling.
Days is one of my favorites. My grandma used to
There
watch
you
it
go.
all the time, and so I would sit there
Yeah.
without a choice and watch these soaps
Yeah.
with her, and now I'm obsessed.
No, they're great, and that's what
Yeah.
happens. I hurt my back, and I was kind of out for a month, and I started watching soap operas, and I was like, "This is fun."
I have a question. Does Matlock count as a soap opera?
No, Matlock's a drama.
Okay, 'cause my grandma used to also watch Matlock,
Yeah.
and it just felt
And
like a
it's back.
soap opera to me. I know, but I didn't know how to categorize it. Okay, sorry. So you had homesick. You had to watch the soaps all day.
So I watched the soaps, and I went to her when I got back and said, "I think this is really interesting." And it happened to coincide with my department getting shut down,
Okay.
and her leaving to go work at NBC. And
Okay.
I decided to move to LA. That if you're going to be in TV, go where television is.
Yeah.
And ABC was very generous with their buyouts, gave me just enough money to get to Los Angeles, and I had some friends to sleep on couches.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was leaving, she said, "Oh, you should meet my boss in LA because I know she's looking for a junior executive." And that was the first meeting I had when I got there. Didn't hear anything for the next 2.5 months. Had pretty much at one point convinced myself that it was never going to
It's not
happen.
going to work. Yeah.
That I'd gone on a lot of interviews, nothing was really clicking into place. So that was interviews in June. In August, out of the blue, I get a phone call saying, "You're hired."
Wow.
And it was just a matter of working its way through the system to
Right.
get approval. So I ended up working for this woman, Jackie Smith, who was at the time just the dean of daytime television. She created the modern soap opera.
Wow.
She created the Luke and Laura love story. She was considered the greatest of daytime television.
Wow.
She was a very big personality in all the good ways,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
all
yeah.
just the great ways. Incredibly passionate
Yeah.
about soaps. But again, not exactly the place I
Where you
wanted,
wanted
to
to
be.
be.
I wanted to be in prime time.
Right.
That's what I watched. That's what I loved. And I was there for a couple of years, and there was an opening in prime time that I did not get, but I did meet
All the
most
other
of the
people.
executives down there. And a week after I did not get the job at NBC, I got a call that from one of the executives at NBC had recommended me to her boyfriend, who was the head of current programming at Fox,
Okay.
because he was looking for a current programming executive. And I went over and met with him, met with his boss, and that's how I got to Fox. So this all becomes
Okay.
connect the dots.
Yeah, of course.
And that became an amazing 6 years because Fox was 4 nights a week when I got there. First show I handled was Beverly Hills 90210.
Okay.
And Aaron Spelling became a mentor
Wow.
to me. I was able to be exposed to Rupert Murdoch on a regular basis,
Right.
Barry Diller on a regular basis, the best of the best.
You were playing in the right sandbox.
And you just sit in meetings with them, and they're so incredibly brilliant at the medium that if you just sop it up like a sponge.
Right.
And that's where I really learned how to being a good network executive is being a really objective person to the writers. You're not
Okay.
in the writer's room.
Okay.
And your really sole job, and if you're in current programming, which is you're there to oversee and kind of make sure the show that was purchased by the network stays the same.
Okay.
And if you do the job well, you need to be the show's biggest champion, but the most objective person.
Critic, right.
And I really loved it. And this is where I found a home. But to be there as they expanded to 7 nights a week, as they got football, and watch it grow and grow and grow.
Right.
And then I spent 2 years, I moved down to drama development because I really did know I wanted to be in 1 hour drama.
Okay.
I was a terrible executive when it came to comedy.
Okay.
Because I'm not really good at it. It's a very different form
Okay.
of storytelling. And I used to frustrate the comedy writers because I would always ask them, "But what's the story?" And they would say, "But the jokes are funny."
Right.
And I'd say, "But what's the story?"
And they're like, there's no
And
story to be had, really.
They didn't know what to make of me, so I just asked eventually, "Can you just give me
Reassign
drama?
me.
Can you just give me dramas to work on?" But while I was in drama development, it gave me the opportunity to. What most people don't know is we developed Sopranos. When I was there, we let it go.
Wow.
And I have to say, as sad as it was to let it go,
it made sense to let it go at the time.
yeah, broadcast standards and practices would have shredded the show.
Okay.
But we did that. I did the X-Files. It's just some of the most iconic shows.
Right.
But I knew after a while I did not want to sit in the big chair.
Hold on. I have a question. And this is relevant to things you've done after where we are in the story right now too. But as you're talking about sort of the role of a network executive, it's the first time I've heard someone sort of clarify it relative to, the writers or the EPs or whatever it would be, right? And so I'm just curious how you felt, because you have the interest in storytelling, right? But you're not the storyteller, right? You're sort of maybe a rudder for the storyteller, right? But you're not really owning the story. You're not creating the story, right? So how did you feel, and how do you feel being in the role of not really telling or crafting or creating the story, but sort of nudging on the side the story? Was that satisfying for you? Does it feel like storytelling for you? How do you react and relate to that?
It was incredibly satisfying.
Okay.
Because it's like being a good editor. They're great storytellers. I got to work with some incredible writers.
Yeah.
And once you gain a trust with them, you are the person that's outside the woods, so to speak. They've been so deep inside their story for so long that you get to read it as a fan to start. And I did really love the shows I worked on.
Yeah.
And you just were guiding where you could say to them, this happens in Act 1, but then the character does something in Act 4, but I don't know how the two things connect.
Right.
Which
they appreciated, I'm sure.
They did.
Right.
And over time, I learned how to keep honing it down to give less and less and less notes. And then when something came in that really wasn't working at any level, you could try to help guide them.
Yeah.
And the good writers and producers listened,
Right.
and they would disagree at times, and I would always give it to them. It's their show.
Yeah.
And if they really pushed back, I would just kind of surrender. But the good ones that were really collaborators appreciated, just the feedback.
Yeah.
And then it was a little frustrating, though, I will say.
Yeah, I imagine it was.
After a while, you realize you're just a receiver of material. You're not a generator of material. And it was an inflection point for me because I had two realizations. Being a network president's probably the worst job in the world for a person like me because I had no ambition to climb a corporate ladder. And back then you were graded every morning on your work by ratings.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
So you get ratings at 6 o'clock in the morning and know
Right.
whether your network was doing well or not.
Right.
And I didn't want, it just didn't appeal to me. What really appealed to me was storytelling. And I had this opportunity. I knew I was going to leave at the end of my contract. I just didn't know where I was going to go. And a friend of mine asked me if I would meet Jerry Bruckheimer. I said absolutely not, because my experience during my years at Fox, working with feature producers, were an incredible amount of arrogance and a feeling like TV was terrible and they were going to fix it. And my attitude was, TV's fantastic, and I hate most of the movies I see, so I don't know what your problem is.
Right.
But they would come in with that attitude. So I didn't want to work with someone with that attitude. And this mutual friend asked me 3 times, and I kept saying, no, I really don't want to do this. And on a Thursday, my assistant walked in and said, you have a meeting with Jerry Bruckheimer tomorrow at 4.
How this get on my book?
And I said, no, I don't. And he said, yeah, you do. Jennifer, who's the person who was setting up the meeting, said, you're too polite to cancel within 24 hours. And then my wife gave me a smack in the head and said, go meet the greatest producer of film, and most successful. Then you'll say no.
Right.
And I went to meet Jerry, and the first thing he said to me was, success in this business is knowing what you don't know, which was just a moment of, wow, this person does not have an ego.
Yeah.
And he said, I love TV, but I don't know anything about TV, but I think I can be additive, and I really want to. I love it. I love the medium. And as I kind of pushed him along to say, what he had shows he watched, shows he loved, why he loved them, and a very strong point of view of what he wanted to do, which was to make TV more visual. And his theory was most TVs were going to become rectangles. They were, square, but they were going. So we were 4x3 going to 16x9, so to speak. And he said, when that happens, that's going to make the medium more visual. And the other insight he had, which was really true, he said people watch TV with their thumb. They click around, and you need to grab them. And once you grab them, then it's up to the writers.
Right.
And he then turned around and grilled me about what I was good at, bad at.
Sure.
And at the end, he looked at me and said, listen, come start a TV department for me, and I will make you a producer. I will teach you how to be a producer, and I'll make you a producer.
Wow.
And I went, deal. Just like one of those moments where
right.
I called my wife from my car and said, I just accepted a job offer from Jerry
She was like,
Bruckheimer.
I told you.
And no, she laughed and cackled and went, what? I said, yeah. And then when I gave notice at Fox, very nice people told me I was out of my mind and this was
Sure.
the world's worst idea. My feeling was, what can happen?
Yeah.
So if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
This is incredible.
It worked.
Of course it did. And we're going to get into the workings of it in a second. But two things. So the first is I am a little bit younger than you, so I have experienced TV, for a shorter period of time than you have. So this way of framing it as it becoming more visual with the different shaped TV is makes so much sense, but it's so funny. I've never heard that before. So how would you have described TV before it became rectangular and more visual? What would drive it?
Radio with pictures.
Okay.
You didn't have to watch. You could just listen.
Okay.
It wasn't. It was very talky. It wasn't. There was no visual narrative to a television show.
So I believe you, and you have to be right because you know this better than I do. But can I give you a counter narrative to this?
Yeah.
I'm sure there are many, obviously. But so I like watching what I would call older television, and one of my favorite older television shows to watch is the original Dynasty. And which is like a soap too, but not
That
quite.
is a soap. That is 100% a soap.
It's a soap. And of course, you could just listen. It's very talky, and the dialogue is incredible. But of course, I had to see their outfits. It was very visual.
Well,
because like Joan Collins.
Because Nolan Miller was a great designer of dresses. And,
Yes, exactly.
And
So-
yes, it looked. Look, Aaron Spelling, who I got to know very, very, very well, and was a friend and a mentor.
Yes.
I asked him what the magic was, and he said, "There's two parts to the magic: put beautiful people in front of beautiful scenery and
Yes.
beautiful clothing." Okay, pretty simple. And he said, and the trick to casting is there's something behind the eyes. If there's nothing behind the eyes, they can't
not
pop
gonna
on
work.
television because it's a medium of close-ups.
Yeah.
But yes, it is visual in that context.
know,
of,
I'm being
yes, of
funny.
absolutely beautiful people.
Yes.
And it was a great show.
Of course.
Yeah.
But it's helpful. I had never known that sort of inflection point in TV, in the trajectory of TV, that's sort of the shape of TV necessarily. And I can think now, in the house, we did have what was a square. And then, of course, over time, there are now these, whatever they call
They're
it,
movie
85-inch, whatever, the movie
Yeah.
screens, right? That's so interesting. The second thing I wanted to ask you was about sort of joining an organization at an inflection point. You've had them in your own personal trajectory, right? But this time, the inflection point maps onto another inflection point of that particular company, right? And you were joining and starting something new. So what was either motivating or sort of fear-inducing for you about coming into something at an inflection point like that?
There was nothing fear-inducing.
Okay.
I was warned before I came there, you're going to have a very thick skin because Barry Diller and Rupert Murdoch and the then president of the network, Peter Chernin, were ruthlessly tough on their executives. And my attitude was, all they can do is fire me. I don't know why people get so stressed. And I never understood why people got stressed out
Right.
because the worst that could happen is you get fired. They can't kill you. But they were tough.
Yeah.
I mean, arguably the toughest in the business. What was fascinating by it was there had not been a new network since ABC. And it was the best of Rupert Murdoch, who's, I was in the room when he announced Fox News.
Sure.
What he announced was not what Fox News is now, but that's for a different time.
different time.
Not an area you want to sway into. But it was really exciting to, see them planning and the slow expansion out to a full 7 nights a week and adding more programming. And then how do you differentiate yourself from everybody else on the air? And their version of that was go younger, was, lean into the fact that 90210 was a hit,
Right.
lean into the fact with your comedies that The Simpsons was a hit. So they were the first network that knew that they had to be incredibly different
Yeah.
to pull eyeballs
Away from
away
somewhere else.
from the broadcast, the big three broadcast networks that dominated. And when I was at NBC, Brandon Tartikoff, who was then president at NBC and a legend in the business, used to call Fox the coat hanger network, in that you'd need a coat hanger to get the signal
Oh, wow.
on your TV, because it was on these affiliates that were
Right.
just really low,
Obscure.
and you know, it'd be on channel 31 in some
Right.
networks, in some areas. But he very much underestimated the drive
Yeah.
of Rupert and Barry Diller to make it a success,
That's
and to give it the
incredible.
resources to make it a
Make it
success.
successful. Yeah.
So it was an experience that will not be replicated. So we're not going to create a new network. We are creating streaming services,
Right.
but I don't really think it's the same
Right.
as creating a commercial network that built to a point that when we were doing Melrose Place on this, I think it was the second or third season finale, we had 75% of the women in America watching that show. And when they started to pull people away from NBC's vaulted and Thursday night because they put The Simpsons
Right. Right.
and 90210 and their top shows on that night, and then start to spread them out, then everyone took Fox seriously.
Of course. They had no choice but to.
But it was incredibly exciting to be part
That's
of
so
that. And I worked
fun.
with great people, some of them still very close friends.
I'm sure. Then you went to Bruckheimer and launched a new department. It's another inflection point in your career, but also in the career of that company. And obviously, there was tons of success there. We'll get
Not
into
at
that.
first.
So I was going to say, in the early days, what was it like trying to scrap and build from scratch?
Awful. We made a mistake when I got there. The thinking was that I should just replicate Jerry's movies as TV shows, and which was really a hard task because you can't really do action, which is where he was in his phase. This is when he was making Enemy of the State, Crimson Tide.
Got it.
And these you can't do an action movie on a TV budget. And we were selling a lot, but I wasn't getting anything ordered. And
Sorry, explain for those like me who don't know
Right.
what that means, the difference between selling a lot
so
and
we
getting
would
nothing
sell to a network an idea
Okay.
that we'd write a script for, but then they wouldn't pick it up to pilot.
Got it.
And for the next steps, because it wasn't really the right concept for the medium, and
Got it.
they understood that, and it was hard for us to attract really top writers because there was this kind of, at that time, wall between feature writers and what television was, and no one wanted to do television until everybody wanted to do television. And but the way we broke out is when 2 years in, we talked, and I asked that I just be allowed to make television, like just let me get back to my roots
Right.
of what I did. And Jerry, just in why he is who he is, said, I trust you, and just go and do. And that was the year I found this young writer named Anthony Zeiker, and who came in and met with me. And I just said, look, if you could do any show you want to do, what would it be? And he kind of thought for a moment and said, I love this show on cable that's about forensic investigators, and it's a reality show, but I think I'd really love to do that as a drama. And I just said, great, let's do that.
What was that show? The one that he was referring to?
Called Forensic. I think it was called Forensic Files.
Oh, Forensic Files. Yeah, I love Forensic.
Yeah.
Love
And
Forensic
he was just
Files.
watching it over the summer with his wife, and he was from Vegas. He was commuting at the time, and I set him up to take a tour of the Vegas Crime Lab, and he came back with CSI, and that was the defining show.
That was the beginning.
And the show that nobody thought would make it on the air. We were the last buy of the season. Everybody else had passed on it, except CBS. And just to give you an idea of, you have what a great network executive usually is. They hear a great idea, they champion it, and they champion it enough that they can convince the upper management to put it on the air.
Got it.
That was Nina Tassler.
Okay.
At CBS, who went on to become a fantastic network president and very successful. And Nina, when we pitched it to Nina, it was very late in the selling season, and Nina looked at me and said, I have $35,000 to buy this script. And fortunately, our studio was willing to deficit the rest.
Right.
But if you think for a moment that that was a $35,000 down payment to a franchise.
That's
what became a franchise.
Right.
Is an executive going with their gut and just taking a flyer on a writer that nobody knew,
right.
on from a company that had no success track record, and that's where Jerry finally got his chance to lean into really making a visual show.
Got you.
And that was the inflection point.
That's incredible. So a couple things, of course, CSI is known by virtually everybody who watches TV and has watched TV for the past two or three decades. The other show, of course, that I think you all are most famous for is The Amazing Race, which is my favorite show in the world almost. And we'll talk about them in detail in a moment. But what strikes me about both those shows, and about TV in particular, is they seem to sort of flip the commonly sort of parroted moniker about TV on its head. That is that TV is simple. You want people to stop watching TV. People tell their kids, don't watch any more TV, read a book, all these different things, right? But both of those shows, in my experience, seem to be so complex and so, I would say in a liberal arts way, like anthropologically informed, right? Or psychologically informed, or whatever it is, right? That it makes it difficult to see them and sort of say, no, you shouldn't watch that. It's bad for you. It's sort of like, it's bad brain food, right? And so I'm just curious how you sort of reacted to those general, or react currently to those general points of feedback about TV, right? That it's
well,
bad
no one
for
says
you.
it anymore.
Right. Oh, is that true?
No. I mean,
Okay.
TV, the way more people ask, what are you watching now than what movie have you seen? And TV has grown to be the dominant entertainment form.
Right. Right. And I guess part of my question is, do you think with that growth has come an appreciation, not just like a casual appreciation, but a recognition that there is sort of a intellectual, thoughtful sort of undergirding to TV?
Oh, absolutely. Look at a
Okay.
show like Succession. That's a novel with, the richness of character, the depth of storytelling.
Yeah.
Wind back the clock 30 years, that was not what television was.
Right.
And the rise of cable TV, which really started with The Sopranos, being the first, really complex and emotionally complex drama series to come on the air, and show that you could do this next level.
Yeah.
Gave birth to in the era of what we call.
I don't understand.
That's my Siri.
Siri's always listening.
Okay. I hope that part will be snipped. But Sopranos was so deep and so rich, and that opened the door.
Incredible.
And writers from film who were genuinely ignored in the movie business, the director was the king. When they came over to television and realized the writer was king, they told their friends.
Come to television.
Come to television and you are ruling the world.
Yeah.
That's when feature writers came to TV. TV did get better.
Right.
And with a show like CSI, you had to watch the show because of the way we did the forensics and the evidence. And Billy Peterson had a joke, which is, I'm not the star of the show, a hair fiber this big is the star of the show. But it was also a teaching tool.
Right.
And I was a little horrified. We were touring schools for our oldest daughter who was about to start grade school. And we're at one of the schools, and we're in a 5th grade class, and the teacher says, who knows what DNA is? And not many hands went up. And then she said, who watches CSI? And a lot of hands went up. I was like, wow, it's a little young
Right. To
for
be
this
watching
show.
this.
Because it was a bit bloody
Yeah.
and gruesome. But we broke a lot of ground with that show.
Absolutely.
And what we showed and what the network permitted us to show.
Absolutely.
And that we looked at as entertaining. That was the first thing we wanted to be. We wanted to tell a great
Certainly.
mystery.
Right.
But it was also an opportunity to teach people
Educational.
Then it kind of turned negative. There's a thing called the CSI effect.
I was going to ask you about this on my note card, the CSI effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
for those who don't know, summarize the CSI effect.
So the
for
CSI
us.
effect is what happened in courtrooms was juries started holding up prosecutors to have all this forensic evidence that CSI had, which was a little bit of a fantasy because most jurisdictions did not have all those tools. But they were acquitting
Because they
criminals.
didn't have
because
the
they
level
didn't
of
because
evidence they
the
saw in
prosecutors didn't
CSI.
have. So what happened was a federal jury instruction was inserted into whatever the judicial guidelines, and a prosecutor could ask a judge to give the CSI instruction, which basically went, you cannot hold the prosecution up to the level of CSI or any other television show that you watch. That is not real life.
So do you see it as a badge of honor?
No, I was really embarrassed by it.
You were embarrassed.
And I actually
really?
I was on jury duty, and I had a prosecutor pull me aside and just read me the riot act about how hard I
Really?
made his job.
But that's not your responsibility. I mean, you know.
No, it's not my responsibility, but I am very civic-minded, so
Of
I felt
course.
really bad
gosh.
about it. And we didn't change a thing we did on the show.
You didn't feel that bad.
But it was, when I saw the U.S., it started with the U.S. News and World Report. They had the
Mm.
cover story that had said the CSI effect.
Wow.
So it was a bit of a badge of an honor in
Yeah.
a way, but not the best thing for the judicial system.
Yeah.
at the end of
But
the
again,
day.
I think, but it speaks to, I think, the intersection of sort of the entertainment world, the television world, and whatever you want to call it, like this anthropological world, this criminological world in this particular case, right? They're related and they're in conversation with one another,
They are.
right? And I think oftentimes people think about them not in a good or bad way, but think about it as fully a fantasy, right? This is entertainment, it's divorced from the real world, or they think it's sort of a, autobiography-esque kind of thing where it's replicating the real world, right?
Yeah, and we used real things.
Yeah.
Our season started with CSI School, and we would bring CSIs in from around the country who would tell us their stories. And we also, in turn, increased enormously the number of people who wanted to become criminalists. And that is a back and forth that TV has with the
Right.
real world.
Absolutely. So, of course, the other show that I just referenced is The Amazing Race, which I love, and I assume you at least like it. Since,
I love it.
since you,
Yeah, it's one
What-
of our favorite shows.
from your perspective, what do you love about it? I'll tell you what I like about it. What do you like about The Amazing Race?
It's the best vacation you'll never get to take.
Mm.
It's we go to places that most people will never get a chance to go to. We bring the world into people's homes.
Yeah.
And that's incredible fantasy. And it's what people really do love about the show. And the other thing we did was we specifically created a competition show of which the elimination was not based on other people doing it.
Right.
It wasn't mean.
Right.
You came in
Right.
last, you were last.
Right.
And that was something we wanted to do right from the get-go. And when Bert Van Munster, who created the show with his wife, Elise, when they first pitched it, they said it's the Tour de France. It is whoever comes in last at the end of a leg is just eliminated. No one's going to vote them off. No one is going to be no judgment calls. And it made it very family-friendly.
Yeah.
For that reason, because there was nothing mean
Right.
about it. It was
Unless you whatever it was, roadblock somewhere or whatever
yeah,
it was.
you turn them
around.
You turn them, and those were just little changes that.
Yeah,
but it was
yeah,
not
yeah.
the origin of the show
Primarily,
didn't have
right,
that stuff in it,
right.
and just you have to evolve it as you go along and make it a
course.
little bit harder. But just the fact that we could go to these countries and do our events there, and do it wrapped around the culture of the country.
Yeah.
It became both educational. The whole family could watch it. It was really family entertainment, and the world.
Yeah, it was incredible. I love it for those reasons and more. I mean, I watched that primarily as a child with my family because it was family friendly, right? And we would always fantasize about, going there, we should do that, or whatever the things were, right? Or my dad and I being on it together,
Right.
all these different kinds of things.
Right.
But you would learn. I mean, even so that was as a child, I watched it that way. But then as an adult, even during COVID, I travel a lot, and I couldn't travel during COVID. And I
Right.
would go back and watch seasons to sort of give me
Yeah.
this travel bug, or at least feel like I was having the experience and the education that came with traveling, right? And so it was a timeless sort of experience. And of course, I loved seeing the dynamism of the different kinds of teams, if you will, of
Yeah.
competitors, right? There was a whole range of different
Yeah.
kinds of people, and that was the first time often you saw certain kinds of people on TV in conversation with other kinds of people,
Yeah.
right? So it was cool.
And the casting is a big part of the show. That mix
Yeah.
of people is one of the big differentiators in the dynamics. And we didn't cast teams to create conflict. We cast teams for their personal story. So if it was a father daughter, we cast them because there was something going on.
Right.
That the race would stress, and to see if they could change, evolve, and grow. The number of, couples that had been dating for 7 years, which in the casting process, I would just look at them and say, "What's the problem?
Right. Why are you not married?
Marry each other or not?" But then they get on the show, and it would either end with them breaking up, or kind of off camera after the show,
Right.
or getting engaged.
Right.
Or they would say to us, "We want to do this to know if we really should be married." We've done a lot of intergen stories where families really did come together, where if it was mother, son, father, daughter, whatever, brothers and sisters,
Right.
who were estranged and want to use this as maybe a way to get back together. Those are really touching stories.
It's funny because I think from a viewer's perspective, sometimes I'm thinking not about The Amazing Race, but I'm thinking about other shows where there's casting involved. And of course, there's casting with a similar-ish mindset, right? As a viewer, I'm always like, oh gosh, like this show is exploiting these people. You know what I mean? Like there's people are clearly going through something, or they're unself-aware, whatever the things are, right? And I think, gosh, like they're entertaining, but I feel so bad that they're being exploited by this show or production company. But it sounds like it's not really. It may happen. I don't know.
It doesn't. I mean, we do the show very clean, and we don't know what we're going to get. I will tell you, there's very often times we will get into the race, and the complete opposite of what we thought would happen with the team happens.
Right.
And we do not. The only time we ever have to go to a team is if they won't talk.
Okay.
Sometimes
to each other.
To each other, or even to camera, because sometimes they get so focused on the race and winning. We have to remind them that
They're on a
part of the
TV
show is
show.
you're self-narrating the show.
Right.
And we need your help a little bit to say
Yeah.
what you're doing. And we do need to interview you, and you need to be able to explain what happened during the day.
Yeah.
That's the only time we ever really, or if there's some bad behavior going on. And we have had a couple of times where, and it's been on camera. This is not it, but we've had one team that he was abusive to his girlfriend, and we said, if this happens again, then we are eliminated. We just cannot have this on camera. It's not acceptable behavior.
Yeah.
And those are uncomfortable. We set the whole race in advance, so there's no way we can
Fix anything.
It's just we're moving a couple hundred people around the globe,
Right,
so
right,
there's no
right.
way to change
Right.
a game. So there's no sense it can be manipulated. No, there's no one pulling the strings.
Yeah.
There's been times where teams have arrived, sometimes before the lead producers.
The producers have gotten there.
In country, which we had to fix up how that was going to spread out. But we're really proud of the show because it is not in any way, shape, or form able to be manipulated.
Yeah, I love that. How, just to pull the curtain back a little bit, because I know there are many folks who are curious, myself included, about how these things happen in production, sort of how are all the pit stops and locations and activities decided upon? What's the process by which you all put that mosaic together?
It starts months out.
Sure.
Burt
It takes
Van Mon-
months to get a visa, so obviously it takes months to plan it.
But we start a long time out. Our lead producers and Burt Van Munster, the creator, will go out and they will go to countries that Burt, in his mind, have thought would be great countries. The world, unfortunately, has shrunk a great deal of where we're
People
allowed to go.
Oh, okay.
The terrorism watch list has gotten longer. And CBS is very protective about where we are allowed.
Yeah, no, this is what I want to know. This
It
is
has
kind
to
of
be
the
safe.
constraints that I'm thinking about.
Yeah, it has to be safe. But they will go to these countries and they will find out, they'll dive into the culture. They'll find out what people do. Sometimes they'll even just go to a bar and say, "What do you do?
Right,
What do
right.
you do for fun?" They'll come home and then they'll start mapping out on bulletin boards, the different parts of the episodes and the different challenges.
Yeah.
And then when it's kind of all laid out, we'll bring the network in and they sign off on the route and the different games, and then it's locked. And because the prop people have to start making props, and the coordinators have to be put in place.
Oh my gosh.
And it is like a military operation.
Yeah, of course.
And then we do need months in advance to get visas, so the casting process starts very early.
Yeah.
on the
Have there
show.
been situations where people haven't been able to participate because they haven't been able to get the visa for a place that's pre-selected as?
No.
Okay.
No, we've never had that problem. We've had people who have not been able to do it either because our medical showed up something that they didn't know
Right.
was going on with themselves,
Right.
or I don't think we've ever had an instance of someone pulling out.
Okay.
We had, I think, one occasion where we found some social media posts that were very uncomfortable.
Troubling.
We went to an alternate team
Yeah.
because they were very troubling, and it's more in the modern age of the show.
Sure.
It was not something back in 2001 that was an issue.
Yeah.
But we pretty much go with our teams.
That's so
we have a
cool.
couple of alternate teams just in case. But
I love that. There was one episode I watched. It was years ago. Maybe it was during COVID. And I forgot what you call it, the final pit stop, if you will, was here in Garrison in the Hudson Valley. And it was so cool because by that point I lived in the Hudson Valley and I
Right.
knew where the place was. Like, oh my God, like this is down the street. How cool.
Yeah.
So it felt fun to see the show in one season be so far from home, obviously, but then also get so close to home at a
Yeah.
certain point too. So it was super cool. You just mentioned sort of the modern iteration of the show versus sort of some more original timing of it. But I'm curious about that relative to both, in these two examples, CSI and The Amazing Race. They're both shows that, of course, have been on the air for over 2 decades. They, of course, have longevity. And in my assumption, I assume the longevity equation is a combination of innovation and consistency, right? There's something that stays consistent about the show people can recognize, they can appreciate, but also there's innovation to sort of move it along and keep it interesting.
Right.
How do you think about the trajectory of those two shows over the course of time, over these 20 plus years?
so it's two different things. 'Cause
Yeah.
on a scripted drama, your characters evolve. That's where you're going to get your evolution. They're dynamic. They have to grow. They have to change. On a procedural, your format, you really do want to stick to the format. The audience shows up. Law and
Right.
Order hasn't changed
Right.
in the, I don't know, 24
Right.
years, whatever it's been,
Right.
forever. On television, the format of the show you lock in. And you try not to play too much with the form, which because procedurals have kind of, you make a contract with the audience
Right.
for what that's going to be, but the characters have to grow and change over time. With Amazing Race, it's not static. It has to be dynamic. You have to surprise the audience in season to season to season. And where it's always a bit of a push-pull between how much the audience just really likes certain parts of the show and they don't want them to change, and how much new. I've had complaints. I've had compliments.
Sure, of course.
You're never gonna please everybody,
Right.
but you do have to keep it fresh. Also, because you have teams that now have watched multiple
30-some odd
seasons of the
seasons,
show,
yeah.
and you don't want them to just
Game the show.
game the show. Just have it, well, they're going to do this, and they're going to do this, and they're going to do this. And,
Yeah.
people now learn to drive a stick shift, which when we first did the show, they didn't know how to do. But they now learn to drive a stick shift. They
Yeah.
learn to memorize flags. There's certain things that they think will
Might
happen.
prepare them, yeah.
And so we try to find ways to throw them off their game.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Having worked in television, and particularly primetime sort of television for so long, I'm curious, honestly, let me say it differently, what you have learned about our country, right? Because you're indexing around, obviously, like people watching your shows, right? And of course, you want the most eyes on your show. And obviously, to do that, you have to make some assumptions about what people in the country like, what they can tolerate, all those kinds of things. So I'm just curious, over the course of your many years working in primetime, like high capacity, high visually engaging television, what have you learned? What do you think about our country and our communities and our society that maybe you wouldn't have known had you not had this lens in mind?
It's an interesting question, one I've never been asked. I think we are way more, when it comes to entertainment,
Yeah.
we are way more alike than we are different. Our politics may be different, and all that goes on there. But when you look at a popular TV show and a very high-rated TV show, that's being watched by every cross-section of America. So you can't get a high rating without it being watched by a cross-section,
Right.
which goes back to just a story well told with characters that people can relate to or they enjoy watching. And it's the fundamentals of just a good story transcends any differences we might have in other parts of lives
Yeah.
in ways. And then TV at times has changed completely perspectives of other things in life. They're more political. I tend to stay away from that because I really look at what I do is to entertain, is to create an hour where you can put your feet up, which is exactly the way I watch television, kind of slouched on the couch with my feet up, and I want to be transported through a story. So I don't think most of the audience wants to be talked at. Mm-hmm. They don't want to go to school. They want to be transformed, and they want to follow characters they love in a world that's really interesting. Yeah. And if it's a mystery, they want it to be engaging and surprising. And if it's a ensemble drama, they want to be, they want to feel and cry or laugh. Yeah. And if they're universals. And it's where I really do come to the theory that we're only different in our politics. Yeah. Other than that, nobody asks you your politics if you like CSI. Right. It gets everybody.
And that's a very helpful answer. And part and parcel of that, or this topic, I'm curious how you think TV has either, punched above its weight or under its weight in its ability to sort of have this universalism, this collective storytelling, help our society overall, like in this not real battle between entertainment and politics, right? In the global effort of trying to get us to come together, right? Is there more that TV can do that it hasn't yet done to be able to aid in that process or that project to fight against?
I don't think that's the job of television.
Yeah.
Norman Lear.
It might have that effect, but it's
right.
Not the job.
Norman Lear set out to change people's perspectives about race, about the differences in our culture, and he's the master of doing it while still making you laugh, right, with tears rolling down your face. Right. That is a tightrope.
That's exceptional,
and truly exceptional. I don't believe it is the role of entertainment television to make statements. It's there to educate, and absolutely can do that. Right. And my joke is, I can practice medicine because I've watched a lot of medical shows. I can practice law because I've watched a lot of law shows. I have a sort of working knowledge of, with the assumption that what they're talking about, they've had experts on set. And I love those shows. Yeah. Because you do learn nuggets here and there. But the real primary job is to entertain. Yeah. I leave it to the theater to stimulate and, to playwrights, because I do believe that's the job of plays. Yeah. Musicals are escapism. So it just depends on the medium.
Yeah, absolutely. And then sort of the reverse of this question, I'm curious how you in the sort of producer seat react or respond to not just sort of the time, like we talked about sort of changing the shows because of course they're on for a long time. I mean, how do you all react to a changing sort of social political ecosystem in which your shows are being watched, right? How does that influence how you think about entertaining people?
I ignore it.
Entirely? Really? That's a hot take. I assume it's a hot take. As the regular citizen, I'm like, they have to be thoughtful and responsive about. So tell me more about how you actually ignore it.
I think if I sat at my desk and listened to a pitch for a show or come up with an idea, and in my head I'm saying, well, is this going to offend people on the right, or is this going to be embraced by people on the left? I would just be paralyzed. Yeah. My litmus test is, do I think people will want to watch it? Do I want to watch it? Is the first one. Mm-hmm. The second one, do I think people just in general will enjoy this show, and will they relate to it in some way or the other? But you have to ignore the noise. It's paralyzing if you try to think of who you might be offending or who you might be, praising. Yeah. I wish more people did just ignore the noise. But I think when TV's really great, it does ignore the noise.
Okay. That's interesting. So I want to challenge it a little bit because to some extent you obviously don't ignore the noise fully, right? Because there are shows I imagine, I can't name it, there are shows I imagine that have a range of pronouns in their shows, right? Which might be considered noise, but they've now incorporated pronouns, maybe they pronouns, for example, in their show, right? Yeah. So is that noise or
no? That's art.
Okay.
That's art. That's an artistic decision. That's if a writer said, "Look, I want to have this character in my show, and they're gonna be a they them." Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right, but your
As long as
argument,
it's
that's
organic
not-
to the story.
Right, that's just natural to the story. It's not because they're trying to appease
Right. If
some theoretical audience member.
there's no way that character would be that way.
Right.
Or they're in a world that it's sort of inorganic to that. You have to contort yourself to bring it into the story.
Right.
Then you're just doing
Then you're
it because you want to do something.
You're pandering at that
You're
point.
pandering. If it's a great character and you go, oh my God, you know what? We haven't seen that character, and especially in this world, go for it.
Right.
Great, do
That's
it.
incredible.
And look, I want to be clear about something.
No,
You know,
yeah.
really good TV is diverse because the world is diverse.
Right.
The best creators and writers know that, go into it. Oftentimes, don't want to predetermine it. They want to cast.
Discover it.
Right. They want to discover it and write to it, or they'll write specific characters for, but you always want to make sure that it's an organic reason they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then that the character is authentic when you're doing the story, because the one thing the audience has, and they always do, is the BS meter.
Mm-hmm.
When you're forcing it, when you're trying to contort a show, when you're trying to make something happen that's not right for the moment, they are moving on to the next thing
Yeah.
in a snap.
It's so funny. That makes perfect sense to me. And as you were talking, it came to me, it's funny. Power is a very funny thing. Obviously, I think people see and conceive power in very different ways. I think one would imagine, and we hear it now in a different context, I'm talking about the political context. You hear people talk about media and network executives in a way that sort of imbues them with lots of power, and sometimes in a nefarious way, right? But it sort of sees that apparatus as like the source of power, right? But as you were talking, it occurs to me the truth really is power shared and negotiated, right? There's obviously the audience and the regular people
Yeah.
who empower you all to do what you do by virtue of liking or not liking your show,
That's
right?
right.
And I think it's just a different way of thinking about the distribution of influence in media.
It's true, and you're 100% right by what you said, and it is the most democratic of all things because you can just turn it off. What I never understood were boycotts,
Say more.
because all they did was publicize the show. I'd love a good boycott on our shows because great, you're bringing so much attention to the show.
Yeah.
When the easiest thing was kill our ratings.
Just don't watch the show.
Just don't watch
Quietly
the show.
don't watch the show.
Yeah, quietly don't watch the show. We've have organizations that have quietly tried to do that.
Right.
For whatever reason, I don't know.
I was going to ask you what were some of the reasons why
I
they
can't
were trying
remember.
to do that. Yeah.
Honestly, the most weirdly inverse was when we did Lucifer, and without ever seeing the show, there were groups that just said it is horrible. You're putting the devil on TV, and they hadn't seen it, so we kept
They had
saying
not much more
watch
to
it because
say,
this show's
right.
a comedy. This show is a completely absurd comedy about
Yeah.
the devil who's solving crimes. I
Yeah.
mean, this is and then we got a note from the network saying, add more religion to it because the religious groups love the show. And they love that you're actually talking about
religion.
religion and God and evil. And,
Right.
and we leaned right into it and never changed the show.
Right.
But it's incredibly democratic because
Yeah.
people can't just turn it off. And God knows, right now we're making about 400 hours of television. We used to make 600. It's not like there's nothing to watch.
Right, there's
So,
options. You have
yeah.
choices. So just on that, and you mentioned it very briefly earlier on, but I just want to talk about it some more. Streaming, but I want to sort of talk about streaming actually in a different way. That I as before this conversation, reflected on streaming as one of the many large industry inflection points in television and media, which there are
That's a
many
nice understatement.
right? Right, certainly, right? There are many others of different types, obviously, right? But I'm just curious how you and your colleagues, but really you have thought about, embraced, sort of navigated this most recent inflection point in the business, and what excites you about it, what makes you concerned about it, all those kinds of things.
Nothing excites me about it.
Okay.
Just to be honest.
Yeah, thank you.
It's because it's been a fool's errand, and it's been annoying. The fact that these big studios spent billions of dollars to get into these streaming wars in this chase for something that didn't really exist.
Right.
And broke.
Wait, I'm sorry. Wait, actually, I just want to clarify something. I just want to flesh that out. The chase for what that didn't really exist.
The chase that they were going to get a lot of people to spend a monthly amount of money In order to do it, they were going to have to spend gigantic amounts of money, make really big TV shows. They're trying to replicate almost what the studios did with the Marvel universes and the DC universes, that they were making these exorbitantly expensive television shows in the mindset of that will attract people. Now, you have to understand, to make a television show, you borrow money to do it. Now, it's easy to do when interest rates are 0%.
Sure.
The minute interest rates went up, and now all these endeavors cost a lot more, but while they were doing it, they were gutting what made TV work for so long, which were the broadcast networks, which were cable TV. And part of it was fear, because there was cord cutting and people were leaving cable. The network revenues were going down. But there was a haphazard way that this all happened.
Yeah.
And you could kind of see the house of cards starting. You knew that it was a house of cards and it was going to just collapse.
It's funny.
And it did.
When did it collapse? And how would
I recognize
recognize
the minute Wall Street
that?
asked Netflix, how are you making money?
Okay.
The minute the metrics changed from how many subscribers they had to how you were going to make a profit.
Got it.
And the next day, the media stocks collapsed.
It's funny to hear you say that. As a consumer, I'm like, oh, it's so successful. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's been a successful project.
Okay, so let's put it in audience terms.
Yeah.
Because I just read this driving up here. There was a headline I just read that the Penguin on Max crossed 1.9 million views for the latest episode.
Okay.
On a broadcast network, that's a test pattern. That's how many people will just watch a blank TV screen.
Right.
Matlock, starring 75-year-old Kathy Bates, is the biggest network premiere on CBS in the last 5 years, and averages over 10 million viewers on 3 days of viewing. It gets as high as 14.
Wow.
It's averaged off now about 9. But just look at the difference.
Right.
That doesn't get as big a headline as. So I have an issue with all this attention going to, and then now if you've noticed, they're raising the prices. They all have commercials.
Right.
So what are they? Broadcast networks.
Right.
So it was always bound to get there, but the problem is that inflection point hit with 2 strikes. And over the last year plus, the business has contracted 25% because of all the money that was spent. It's going to probably end up being contracted by 30%.
Sure.
And the cost of the TV shows are coming way down. And as a good friend of mine says, the only difference now between streaming and network is 3 hours. Because every network show ends up on a streamer.
Right. It's true.
And so to me, it just was a fool's. I'm not even a business major, and I could tell it was a fool's errand.
Yeah.
So it's been incredibly frustrating because now it's really hard to sell shows right now. The money is very, very tight. There's a lot of frustration. There's groups of executives that don't know if they're going to get fired next week. So there's fear.
It's very precarious.
And it's only for now. The business will shake itself out, and entertainment isn't going anywhere. What is the positive thing? I think less money creates better creativity.
Yeah. So it's funny you said that. The other thing I was going to throw into the mix of this equation or this current ecology is user-generated content, right? Because frankly, I probably watch less TV than I would have on average 5 years ago. All things controlled from my time and busyness, whatever, but just because I love user-generated content. I'm not on TikTok. I don't even have it on my phone because I know that I'm addictive in that way, but I love YouTube. I mean, I watch YouTube content
it's number one
every
watched
day. Absolutely.
Broadcast.
Right?
Yeah.
So how does that relate into this calculus of streamers versus like where does it fit?
It's the number one watched. I don't even know what to call it. Streamer, broadcaster. It is the number one watched medium right now is YouTube.
Yeah.
And they have more hours engagement. The English teacher, which I referenced earlier, that came off of YouTube. The creator of that show had a YouTube channel with him and a couple friends, and that was an offshoot.
Which is funny, right? Because it's funny because obviously you're talking about YouTube in the aggregate being the largest sort of viewed content provider, if you will. And so one would imagine that people that found success on YouTube would be happy to stay there and not go to somewhere else.
The allure of Hollywood.
Right, but people have some reason to want to go off YouTube to
when FX comes to you and says we want to do something with you, it is going to give you a bigger, a more wider, expansive audience because
It's niche
the
when it's-
algorithms
Yeah.
funnel you through
Right.
YouTube. The funniest quote I just heard recently was Al Pacino was on the New York Times interview.
Yes.
And they asked him if he watched TV, and his answer was, "Yeah, I do. I love YouTube."
It's so true. And the thing is, obviously, I mean, you know this better than I, but those things don't have to be adversarial. Right?
No.
I mean, obviously, in fact, a lot of the YouTube content I watch are reviews of cable shows, right? So they're obviously cross sort of related, if you will, right? But I think we often talk about them in sort of an adversarial way, which seems to be not
No,
healthy.
nothing. There isn't. It's not adversarial. It's all mushed
Okay,
now. So it's attention for eyeballs,
got it.
and it's generational.
Absolutely.
Because my kids are all over the map.
Right.
My generation still kind of hews more towards traditional. We're not on TikTok.
Yeah.
And hews towards the more traditional, forms of TV.
Yeah.
But I've got, oh my God, I'm up to like 7 or 8 streaming services. But I will admit I'm a churn and burner.
Yeah.
I watch what I want to watch and I cancel it. Then I
Well, I
find
feel
something-
less bad about my own behavior knowing that you, in the business as a TV executive, also have 7 or 8 streaming services.
Yeah, no, because there's so much great TV.
There is, absolutely. Well, I want to pivot as we end to our student hot seat questions.
Great.
There are 3. They shouldn't be too hard from my perspective. Hopefully, you don't find them too hard. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. The first one is, what is your favorite show that was pitched but never bought or picked up? Like the concept of that show.
I don't have one because I've picked up everything I've loved.
A cheating answer.
And I can't even cheat the answer. I honestly have never not picked up a show I love. I've made mistakes.
Okay, let's talk
So
about
I will
that.
tell you that my biggest mistake was
Okay.
The Mentalist.
Okay.
That was pitched to us. I've actually made 2. Mentalist
Mm-hmm.
and Scandal.
Tell us. People,
So-
people
So
wanna know about
Mentalist
that.
was pitched to us. I looked at we heard the pitch and I said to myself, well, kind of every detective is this way. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure what
the
was
new
what
thing
the big
was.
differentiator was.
Yeah.
Huge hit.
Yeah.
When Scandal it wasn't pitched to us as Scandal. It was just pitched to us with the woman the show was created. And I just felt uneasy about bad people. Her job is crisis management.
Yeah.
Which crisis management at the end of the day is someone's done something really horrible and
Trying to
needs,
cover it up.
It needs to get out of the situation. And it just made me feel icky. I watched every episode of Scandal.
Of course you did.
When it got into Shonda was the absolutely right person to do that show.
Yeah.
Her alchemy was perfect because I would have never had it, like the crazy story with the president
Right,
and
right.
all those different kinds of characters and the depth of their backstories was incredible. But other than that, there's never been a show that I've loved
That you didn't
that we
pick
didn't
up.
put into development.
Okay, good. We got something out of that question. Second thing is, I can't even read my handwriting.
That sounds like me.
Oh. It says, where haven't they been on The Amazing Race that you think they should go?
Sadly, it's been Israel and Egypt because it's always in conflict. We tried because we thought it'd be great to go through Israel, then to go up Mount Sinai, come back down, the other side be in Egypt. And security just said it's a zone of conflict. We can never guarantee safety because you don't know when
Something might
happen.
Oh, gosh.
That's the biggest heartbreak.
Oh, well, hopefully at some point
Yeah.
it'll be different. And the third is, you sort of answered this already, but they wrote, do you feel that television is oversaturated?
Not well, way less now. It was.
Okay.
There was a point where we're making 625 shows a year. This contraction is going to bring that down to about 400. No one's going to notice the difference.
Well, so I was going to ask you, so what was the indicator that would make you say that number is too much? Like beyond just being that number, what was the feeling or the experience that made you say
there was too much to watch. There were shows I couldn't even find time to watch.
Okay.
That we just had to decide. My wife and I watch a lot of TV at night, and we would just have to decide. Okay, well, we're going to put our attention to this one, maybe not this one. That's why it took us so long to get to Slow Horses. And we just started watching it this year. It's in its sixth season.
Right.
And It is oversaturated.
And when it contracts in the way that you said it will, in ways that make it less saturated, what goes? What falls off? Right? What are the stories that you feel like?
The shows that fall off, it's metrics.
Okay.
It's how are you performing? What are you delivering to whatever service you're on? It's survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
I think there's two things that keep you on the air. Network loves it and wants to try to make it work.
Yeah.
And they'll throw resources at it, or it's just performing.
Well, right.
And it's Darwinism. Perform well, you stay on the air. Mid-level performer, not really doing well. People may love it, but it's a small group, and it gets canceled.
Yeah. Gosh. Well, it's been so exciting talking to you, Jonathan.
It's been fun.
I'm happy to have had you have your first podcast experience with me. And also, it's great for you to sort of talk about some of the salt lines we like to explore here. I mean, there is this cool intersection between the effect of television on real life and vice versa, right?
There is.
And I like to think that, as you said, we can complicate the narrative of television to be much more than just sort of a brainless exercise, right? But rather a thoughtful storytelling experience that includes things that make us think and make us grow. So thank you for being at the helm of that in many ways.
Thanks.
Of course.
This was fun.
I'm happy you had a good time.
I did.
And thank you all for joining us for another episode of Conversations at the Salt Line. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.